Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. If you're joining me live, thanks very much. If you're watching this back, thanks very much. If you're not here at all, I hope you're keeping well. Gary Turner here. What I was going to look to do today was just do I do a number of keynote talks, and this is actually a new one, really. But to be honest, it's more than just a pro bono talk I'm looking to offer today. I don't know about you, but there's a lot of stuff going on in this world of ours, whether it's the workplace, home lives, systemically, environment, social justice, Ukraine, Russia, a whole host of other things occurring down in the global south. There's a lot of stuff going on. And I think what I really wanted to do was just express a little bit about, from my lens on the world, how helpful I'm finding it to really try and sit with these complexities, to sit with these difficulties that I and we are facing right now, because the world is complex. Each of us are complex. And really what I wanted to take you through today was just a bit of my personal, what I'm calling awakening journey over the last 7 years. Now, I'm just Gary. I'm one human being out of nearly 8 billion on the planet. But it's my lived experience, my story, my vulnerability, my insight, my learning. And that's really what this is about, is just trying to share some learning that I've achieved over the last few years, and really emphasizing a critical point. There's so much rightly out there around the move towards compassionate leadership, be more human, inverted commas, leverage soft skills as well as the hard skills, etc. But what does it really mean? What does it mean? What does it feel like to deal with past challenges? What does it truly feel like in our body to be in a difficult conversation? What does it feel like to feel afraid? Now, we've probably all got our own versions of what these different things feel like. But just to jump to the end, there's so much freedom on the other side of understanding who and what we are. And that's really what I want to explain today. So let me get on with it. If you've got any questions or challenges or ideas, I'd absolutely love for you to drop them in the chat. I will come back to them once I've wrapped up. It's not going to be a lengthy talk today. It's only going to be probably 15, 20 minutes or so. And again, honestly, this is also a practice ground for me. Like I said, I do a lot of keynote talks, but I've not done one as sort of like in the moment vulnerable as this one. So I'm going to be weaving a lot of different aspects together. And thanks, Stace, so much for popping along to join me today as well. So just before I get going, if you're interested, if you know me, if you don't know me, if you're interested in a little bit of what I'm doing on top of the day job that I have working in the chemicals industry, looking after 20 million worth of sales and leading people and culture across a matrix structure, check out HEXO You can find out a bit more about what I'm doing outside of the day job. So let me get into it. I'm going to share my screen. I'm hoping that comes up for you. This is always the acid test with the technology, i.e. Gary. It's the acid test with Gary. Let's be completely honest. So, and I'm just trying to locate my file. It's popped away. Come on, StreamYard, be kind to me. Was there a minute ago? So let's try that again. The one benefit of being in person with you all, of course, is that I wouldn't have this issue. I would just take you straight into it. So thanks for bearing with me. Okay, I might just have to talk it without the graphics, because I definitely have a weaker connection today for some reason. But it would really add something to be able to share the graphics. So let's just try it one more time. StreamYard. So let's do present mode. Let's see if that helps at all. Sorry, Stace, and anyone else that may be watching. Here we go. So hopefully you can now see that. Yeah, looks like is Is the screen coming through? It's still blank. Got big problems on StreamYard today. There we are. Now I know what the problem is. This is the beauty of technology at times. Oh, it popped out and popped back off again. What a nightmare. That's Stace, thanks for your thumbs up, but I can only see blank. Can you see the presentation at all, Stace? I can only see a blank screen at the moment, which is very sad. Let's try again. And it's popped off again. Okay, let's riff, because I don't want to keep people sitting around. So I've actually got some slides, which I'm happy I can share with some people afterwards. But in essence, yeah, thanks very much. Thanks very much, Stace. Yeah, so let's just jump into the content. It's my story. Basically, what I wanted to share with you, there's actually a visual that sits behind this. And really what I want to invite you to think about are 5 things initially. Self-worth, vulnerability, systemic awareness, intuition and creativity, and emotional suppression. They're 5 aspects of our human experience that I would love for you just to hold in your experience as I go through these next few minutes. So again, self-worth, vulnerability, systemic awareness, intuition and creativity, and emotional suppression. Now, the graph that I had organized for you in my share, if you imagine on the x-axis, you have a timeline. So from when I was born in 1976 through to present day and even on to 2025. And then on the y-axis, I've got what I call base integration or wholeness. And if you imagine you've got a baseline of 100 as a straight line going across, I'm going to talk a little bit about each of those 5 aspects of my human experience and what some of the helpful things for me have been that have helped me not only get back to being more of a baseline 100, but even starting to look to exceed past what I first thought the best version of Gary could ever look like. So there's something here about the more we understand ourselves, the more we understand our stories, the more we understand our narratives from the inside out. This is way before you've gone out and you've done your job, you've got an education, you've got a degree, you've become a carer, you've become a doctor. Before all of that stuff, there is a you. And you might just happen, Stace names it Stace, I name it Gary, you may name it something else. But that being that you are is an abundant ball of energy before everything gets added, the labels and the societal narratives, etc. And that's what I'm speaking about, a baseline 100 integration. So I first want to speak a little bit about self-worth. So if I look at my graph just very briefly, because I just want to bring this to life for you, from a self-worth point of view, I started, when you come into this planet, you're very much that, you're rolling around, you're a ball of energy, you're enjoying stuff, you're learning, you're thriving. Yeah, you're having knocks along the way, you're having arguments, you fall out with people. That's just life. That's part of the human experience. But when I hit age 12, 13, that's where I experienced bullying for the first time. So even though I'm a white male, I've also been othered. I don't have any of the other biases or aggressions that many people from the LGBT community face, or those that may have a different skin tone to me face, those with different intersectionalities. So I acknowledge that I have a different experience to those people that will face more prejudice, unfortunately. But in my own way, I had my own version of othering. And that version of othering was me being beaten up by a group of boys, aged 12, 13, repeatedly for 2 years. Now, why I share that is that when I came from that baseline 100, suddenly my self-worth started to drop. And that progressively went down over the next 10 years to 50 and well into my mid to late 20s. And the reason that happened is I wasn't taught at home about emotion. I wasn't taught at school about emotion. I wasn't taught about feelings. In fact, anything, I'd been conditioned, particularly as a man, to be told that you don't feel, you don't acknowledge emotion. You just stuff it down as deeply inside of you as you possibly can and just ignore it and get on with it. Be stoic. That's what you do as a man. So that's what I did. Not blaming anybody, but you'll start to see some patterns over the next minutes of this talk. And then as I layered up the stories in my head, told myself I wasn't good enough, told myself like, oh my God, is this what the rest of my life is going to be like? What I then found is that when I ended up dropping down to this maybe 30, 35 self-worth out of just my starting point of 100, so I've dropped like a stone over 15 years. Like suddenly I'm in this space of, I'm not good enough. I don't know what this feeling is in my body. I don't understand. I don't know how to process it. And this is what's really interesting, because it's almost like addiction, right? It's like I was a highly functioning addict. I was still doing a great thing around my work. I had brilliant friends. I was thriving in the workplace. But inside of Gary, there was this hurt. There was this emptiness. There was this can't quite join all of the dots. And you know something? That continued with me until 7 years ago. Why 7 years ago? I'll come on to that generally around all these other themes shortly. But what happened 7 years ago is that's when I really had the integration starting to kick in. But let me go through these other aspects just to build the story for you. So that's a bit about self-worth. Then I talk about vulnerability. So vulnerability from a very young age, I did not feel comfortable with that, even from day dot, from as early as I can remember. And I now know why as an adult, because my parents couldn't express vulnerability very easily through their own versions of trauma at home. Emotions were not discussed. They were not suppressed per se. They just were not discussed. So that was my model. That was my understanding, is that we don't discuss emotion. And then, of course, in school, you're not taught about emotion. Then in the workplace, you're told that it's not okay. It's all about IQ. You need to be clever. You need your grades. So I hovered around this 40 to 45 out of 100 base level vulnerability. And then it plummeted, as you would expect, following me being bullied. Again, so self-worth dropped. My vulnerability has dropped. My ability to feel and to sense and to say I don't know and to ask for help just crashed. And literally, it's almost like nothing, zero vulnerability. And that stayed that way for me right through till the end of the 90s and going into year 2000. And then over the next sort of 15 years, it gradually started to come up a little bit, but not above a 40 out of 100. So I'm still well below like what would be a base level of vulnerability, I feel. Right the way up to 2015. Again, link, midlife awakening, 6-7 years ago. So that's self-worth, that's vulnerability. Systemic awareness. This is a critical part. Zero systemic awareness. I had no idea how interconnected and interdependent every single thing and every human being is, and everything that's non-human on this planet. And that continued right through till year 2000. And I would say I only started then because I started to work in the chemicals industry, of which I still do. And I started to join the dots. Oh, that comes from here, that comes from there. We're shipping raw materials around the world to make our iPhone. It's not just an iPhone, it's made up of other products. But that was only a very beginning, early stage awareness of systems and how they impact, how I impact them and how they impact me. And that continued right the way. And it didn't get above a 40 either until 2015. Starting to see a trend now. Intuition and creativity. Excuse me. So it's always creative, always running around, always playing with stuff, always imagining stuff. Highly creative kid, as we all are when we roll out of wherever we come from. And that continued for me for a good 10 to 12 years. And then bullied. Creativity dropped again, probably to about a 40, 45. But it stayed, that's hovered around 40 to 60, 70-ish maybe, right up until 2015. So again, I didn't lose all of that creativity due to the bullying and due to the stories I was telling myself, but it wasn't where it could have been. And then finally, emotional suppression. One of the most critically important topics, I feel. And this hits hard. So you can imagine. Didn't even talk about emotion. So I didn't really know any difference. I'm still at this baseline 100 because I don't know any different. Hit age 12, 13, plummet, suppress everything. And that continued continued to be low and on a downward spiral right the way through till 7 years ago again. So what I want to bring you right up to date with is that there's actually a number of things that happened throughout those periods of my life that really informed me staying in those lower ebbs of my human experience. One being age 19, 20, heavily into gambling, heavily into the dance scene. I got made redundant for the first time in year 2000 as a recruitment consultant. I just was not good enough. I know I wasn't good enough. I was crying, sobbing tears when they let me go. But they were the most empathetic, most caring company at the time, gave me a full month's pay, said, look, it's not personal. You're just not up to doing the job, but let us try and help you find another job. So humane. When I look at what happened yesterday with the P&O cruises, 800 people lost their jobs by bloody Zoom. Just horrific. But all of these things, all of these other experiences of life that we don't talk about enough were going on in the background. And it was all linked to the lower self-worth, the lowest, the inability to be vulnerable, the emotional suppression, the lack of awareness. All of these things were in this melting pot of my human experience, and they weren't being engaged with. I wasn't having a dialogue with them. I wasn't like sort of holding them and just wanting to understand where that's come from. My curiosity had gone. I had no curiosity. So all of these things were happening in the background, yet on the outside, my career was soaring. I was making more money. I was getting promoted. I was doing a great job. So I'm going to pause here for a second and thank you, Stacey, if you're still with me, and anybody else that watches live or watches this back, because this is a critical part I want to come to, and then I'll just go into the real learning phase for me. Just because we're doing well in our jobs on the outside doesn't mean that the human being is doing well on the inside. And I just look around. I look at the war that's taking place now in Ukraine and Russia. I look at the toxicity at the top of so many of our organizations, the top of the political system, in the media. These are scared little boys like I was, age 12, 13, and even as I was up until 7 years ago. I have deep, deep empathy for everyone that feels so afraid that they cannot stare in the mirror and look at their shadows and have the conversations with themselves, with the support of others and around others that they need to heal from the inside out, to acknowledge those stories and let go what needs to let go. So this talk, the reason I'm doing this talk, because it's so visceral for me right now as we look at what's going on in the world, particularly my fellow men, those that identify as male, those that are at top of organizations, particularly those that I'm part of, such as the pharmaceutical industry, the chemical industry, big energy, global supply chain. I'm looking directly at you with deep, deep empathy. If you're unable to feel, if you're unable to be vulnerable, if it terrifies you, the prospect of sharing even a tiny bit of your personal story, please reach out and let's connect. Because we need all of you. We need all of us in connected, heartfelt dialogue to co-create and reimagine and let go of the ways that just do not serve us, the planet, or all of our social justice challenges that we're all experiencing right now. It's literally a shift in mindset. It's a shift in going inward instead of myopically focusing on just the outside. And that leads me then to what happened 7 years ago. What exactly took place for me 7 years ago that enabled and allowed me to start to accelerate well past the 100 baseline into the 140s, the 150s, the exponential territory that I know my friend Stace, myself, Heather and many of the coaches with Heather Younger and her caring leadership community and beyond know is sitting, waiting within every single one of us. You, chemical industry leader, pharmaceutical leader, government leader, tyrant and dictator, there is love and connection and warmth and a desire to be bigger than yourself within you. It just might be hidden away so deeply under your trauma and your fear and your not enoughness. Just know there is so much more available to you. And that's where the last 7 years ago, what did it take for me? It took for me to have the six-figure, the package, the house, the family, the holidays. I had everything that I was socialized for the first 39 years of my life mattered. And I sat there hollow in my flat 7 years ago, empty. What I now call it is spiritual bankruptcy. Energetically, I just had nothing. I was spent. So something happened. I got curious. Why? I cannot tell you to this day, but I just got curious. I was like, wow, okay, why do I feel so empty? Why do I feel like there's something missing in my life when I've got all of this stuff outside of me that I've been socialized to believe is all that matters. And that sent me on this crazy journey into learning and development, organizational design and development, getting chartered membership of the Chartered Institute of Personal and Development here in the UK, the alternatives to SHRM in the US. All the while, I'm still working in the chemical industry. I'm still doing the same international sales role that I still do today. But I'm evolving, I'm learning, I'm connecting with the global community outside of my sector, outside of my lane, intentionally. And then that leads me then into the terrible tragic events with George Floyd a couple of years ago, which was another learning for me as I cried for 3 days. I didn't even know the man, but I felt that trauma collectively as a singular global race. I cried for 3 days because I felt the pain of our connected humanity, that we can take life so easily from one another, again, because we're not connected to ourselves. We're not doing the work of understanding, where are we with our self-worth? Why can't I be vulnerable? Why am I suppressing my emotion? So my invitation with this talk, and I'm going to go to some final invitations and recommendations for those that may be interested shortly. Please, 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 for your family, for you, for your communities, for the planet, value your humanity, these so-called soft skills. I hate the term, I call them the humanistic skills, but please put on equal parity the ability to deliver technically, which we need, developing new process, coming up with new ideas, with our peers are critical. We've got to balance EQ and IQ. Everyone talks about emotional intelligence, and it's critical. It's in here. We've got to start inside. And if you are looking outside of you to see the change that you believe needs to happen in the world, it's not going to come. It's got to come from the inside out with external community, intentionally diverse community. And that was one of the biggest things that came out of the George Floyd tragic murder, was my intentional diversification of my own network exponentially over the last 2 years. So I think what I want to just sort of wrap up really for now is my gratitude for you, Stace, for being here with me. For anyone else that may watch this back or maybe watching live but just don't want to engage, that's okay. This is a message of constructive debate, love, and invitation to please, please, please look inside of you. We are all busy, life is busy, but the planet does not have the time, based on our current overconsumptive ways, our extractive ways, both in terms of raw materials and in terms of how we lead ourselves and those fellow humans around us. We are running out of time. There is a climate emergency. We have got a social justice emergency. And the situation in Ukraine and Russia is just going to multiply more and more and more as those with power continue to try and grab hold of this old world that is dying. I care about you. I care about you living the fullest, brightest, boldest life that you possibly can. But it will not happen if you are stuck in your head believing that the next 3 months quarterly earnings or the next car or the next holiday is going to be enough to satisfy that hole that you may well feel that I experienced in the past. This is not a perfect scenario. I'm up and down like a yo-yo. I'm forever making mistakes. I can point over here indeed to a diagram that I wrote the other day, which is on one side, it says when Gary's not at his best. And what I've got there, I'm in judgment. I'm restless. I'm in control. I'm trying to control situations. That's when I'm not at my best. And what are the emotions that express out of me? It's irritability, it's anger, it's impulsiveness. I get assumptive, I get pushy, and I get judgmental. And that's okay. That doesn't make Gary Turner a bad human. But what I've managed to do over time is I now see and sense, and I allow myself to sit in those emotions as they come, and then they disappear far more quickly instead of trying to suppress them with drink, drugs, alcohol, sex, or whatever the next thing is that you may be taking on, or work, whatever it is, travel, whatever the thing is that you may go to avoid feeling. My invitation is feel. Find someone to do it with. You don't have to pay for that support. Find a friend, find a colleague, find Stace, find myself. There's millions of people out there that will be prepared to hold the space for you. But if you do want support over 5 sessions, 10 sessions, do drop me a line. Or if I'm not the right fit, I'll direct you to one of many people that might be. When I am the best version of me, what does it look like? I'm curious, I'm exploring, I'm innovative, I'm empathetic. I'm deeply curious, I'm uniting and I'm aligning, I'm a delicate space holder. I'm pattern spotting, I'm acting as a vulnerability gateway, which I hope I'm doing today. By holding the space and role modeling my vulnerability, I'm inviting you to step into yours. Systemically aware, energetically inviting, I'm holding emergence, the vulnerability to be okay with not knowing what comes next. Constructively innovative and a deep relationship builder. That's what happens with Gary when I'm at my best. The invitation here is we are all of that, all of the time, and it just shows up in different ways, depending on where our thinking is, our environment, and what we're dealing with in the moment. I can't change the world on my own. You can't change the world on your own. But together, as we do the inner work and then show up as the more whole, human, connected version of ourselves, we can change the world. I believe we will change the world, but there will be pain to come. There's going to be challenges, but the more we unite and connect, we will get through it. I'm 100% sure. So finally, what I love to do, and I'm very, very apologetic that my screen didn't work, but I'm hoping I've managed to give you enough to 25 minutes. So I'm going to try and wrap up by 30. I'm just going to share some of the key reflections, some of the invitations. And again, this is just through my lens on the world. This isn't the 10 steps to anything. It's just offers, provocations, reflections, in case you find some value. Okay. So excuse me as I look away. So number one, do something. Excuse me with the dog. Oh, hello. This is what happens with a dog. And yes, I'm now back. So just a few of the other things to share. So do center those communities and people's most oppressed and or not observable day to day in your experience of life. Go out of your way to decenter yourself as much as possible as we look to move towards the just relationships for collective well-being. How do we go about making sure that we reimagine what the metrics that matter, and we get away from just looking at GDP, possessions, accumulation, etc. A reminder that we are infinite, limitless balls of energy and creativity, contrary to what we've been socialized and educated to believe. We are social animals. We need each other. And we are actually, without each other, we're nothing. We are already connected, you, I, every single one of us. We don't need anything to activate that. We just need to remember that, even in the moments of high stress, that we can call on one another as humans, even those that we don't know. In fact, especially those that we don't know. Acknowledge and appreciate that every single experience of life, there is always a lesson, an insight within, no matter how painful or joyous at the time. Look at all of life, all of the time. What are we doing that destroys life? And what are you doing that gives life? What changes need to be made? And I'm sitting in these questions all of the time myself. I'm so work in progress with all of us. Vulnerability is way more than showing some emotion. It's a way of being. It's a way to navigate the unknown and to live life with more play and freedom, regardless of what's going on in the outside world. And please, especially you senior leaders, I empathize deeply with you, particularly at these times. Don't be afraid to ask for help, whether at home, at work, or in society at large. And please do take the time to reflect and remind yourself of your journey, past, present, and imagining the future, as I shared with you previously. You have got exponential 100x energy within you waiting to be unlocked. But are you surrounding yourself with the people that allow that to happen? Are you communicating with in a way that helps you espouse that? Are you developing community intentionally diverse that allows you to really unlock all of that? These are the sorts of things I invite you to think about. And finally, please don't wait for your organization or line manager to develop you. There are infinite options out there, many free of charge, such as podcasts, blogs, and other human beings. This is critically important because this is one of my issues of the past, working in corporate life, is that I was waiting for the company to develop me. It's their responsibility. They're paying me, they need to develop me. No, it's on me, it's on you to decide what good and healthy looks like for you as your next iteration. Do be vocal. Do find your voice. The world's need it. That's one of the most critically important points. And I'm still trying to find my voice. This presentation, this talk today is a practice for me, going this deep and sharing this level of vulnerability, but from a place of, I've done the work. I understand myself enough to be able to express this and invite and try and be that vulnerability gateway for others. Practice deep generative listening, alone and also with others. And I can offer Nancy Klein's work around the thinking environment. Time to Think is a fantastic resource if you haven't read it. Get clear of what you want more of and less of in your life. Get curious about learning from and with those that are younger than you, as well as those that are older. There's this wonderful, well-intentioned reverse mentoring topic, great, but I still feel it puts a power dynamic in the person that's older. I've learned more in the last 3 years from people that are significantly younger than me, and it's given me an access to wisdom that I would never have had if I stayed within just my age group. Don't hold back from voicing what you care about and what you want to be doing more of. Don't be afraid of running experiments, nor don't seek permission when you want to run them. As long as you're not blowing up the system, push the boundaries, find co-collaborators to run experiments. I can assure you that your work organizations will not be upset when you go there and tell them, this improvement happened, we've won this new business, we've developed this new product that's going to help us save the world. Finally, do unplug from the matrix. Get super curious, be that 2-year-old wondrous child as often as possible. And that wraps up today, just over half an hour. Just want to say, if you've watched this, listen back. Thank you. This will also get repurposed on my Activating Consciousness podcast in a couple of months' time. But if you are curious, about potentially working with myself, particularly if you're in a senior leadership capacity within my industries, up or downstream, that's big oil, that's energy, that's chemicals, that is global supply chain, that is food, that is pharma, that is manufacturing. I'm particularly interested to speak to you because our sectors touch every part of humanity. And we need collectively, I believe, to be able to show up in our truth, with ideas, with wisdom, in connection to ourselves, others, and systems at large. If we're not doing that, we are a tiny fraction of who we could be, and the world needs us all on deck, every 100% full embraced aspects of ourselves. So if having someone to hold space for you as a strategic advisor and thinking partner could add value, please do let me know. I'm only taking on 5 clients at any one time because I'm still doing a day job full time, but I'm really keen to support and hold space for 5 individuals or senior leaders. And what does that look like for anyone that might still be with us? Rachel shared that after just 5 one-hour sessions, she alleviated over 25 years of internal mental blockage. Someone else also shared, once again, this approach has led me to answers I did not even know that I had. Someone else also shared, I've never felt so fluid in my thinking. Gary has a unique way of compiling your output and presenting it back with a strategic focus. The process is incredibly insightful. These are just a few examples. I'm not special. I'm just one human being that happens to have done the work and has a gift for holding space and playing back what I'm hearing with strategic focus and with laser precision based on what you're telling me you want to receive as service. So be well, stay safe. Thank you very much, Laura. I see you popped along as well. Appreciate you. I appreciate you, Stace. Anyone else that watches this back, I appreciate you all for investing in you. And I hope it gives you even just a morsel of insight to go and explore within your own experience of life. So I'm just going to finish up by sharing with you. There is a wonderful human development space coming up in the across the 20th and the 21st of July, 2022. We ran this for the first time last year in September. It's an emergent co-creative space. We co-create the agenda together as delegates. We facilitate together as delegates. Nobody's on the stage. Nobody's more important than anybody else, fully self-managed, fully self-organized. And we had people leaving these sessions, including me, with just the most incredible insights, changes in business models, new relationships and collaborations formed. Joe Homstead and I will be your co-facilitators across the 2 days. And what's just amazing is the price. We will be at Hefflington House, that beautiful country home that you can see to the bottom left of the screen right now. 11 on-site bedrooms are free outside of myself and Joe's. So if you're interested to come and join with us, use it just as a retreat, be part of the experience. It's £200 UK for the 2 days all in, including lunch. And if you want to stay on site, it's £150 per night. Dinner, bed and breakfast, includes a roaring log fire and some incredible conversation and relationship building. So probably the most accessible, inclusive and potential enhancing event, I believe, you could probably go to. And for less than a day ticket to most major conferences. And most major conferences, you barely see or hear anybody, and I question how much learning actually gets transferred. So thanks so much. Much love. Thank you for bearing with me. No slides. The tech collapsed today. But hey, thank you for the encouragement, Stace. Thanks for popping along. Laura, love you all. I appreciate you all. We are so much more than we believe we are. Let's get out there. Let's do the work and take care. Take care.